Power of the Mind. This is the Outside Gate with Steve Hall on the L4 Media Network, where we talk US Moto and anywhere the conversation goes. And today we're joined by Steve and Denise Hatch, and I'm excited about this episode. How are you?
Doing good.
Fantastic.
I had to pause for a moment and try to translate that Aussie accent. We're good. You?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm always great whenever I get to talk a bit of moto. So yeah, and sometimes it does take a little bit of getting used to my accent, but yeah. So we were just talking off air. I was just congratulating the guys about they helped out Grant Davis this year and with his GNCC championship. So I just was just congratulating them on that. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Grant's had just a remarkable year. He's been fun to watch. It just all came together for him this year. He has been training with some of the top guys. He's been training down in North Carolina with Caleb Russell. And then he popped on to the mindset with us this year, and it just was everything came together for him. And as we were saying earlier, he's a remarkable athlete, but when it came together, he just, I think the thing about Grant is that he is a prime example of power of the mind. Even he had a separated shoulder. One of the races that he ended up winning,
The overall.
the overall, with injury, with a big banner wrapped up in his back tire, had a loss of, I think, rear brake for a couple laps.
Laps.
It's just everything that he had to face. Most people would maybe have quit or never even occurred to them that they could have won the overall. But Grant just powered through and just kept on after it, and got his best result ever for that day, and then did it again on the day he won his championship, got the overall. So it's just incredibly impressive to watch him.
And he really just does it. We tell him something to do, and most people are like, yeah, I want to win, but I don't really want to do the work, especially on some stuff. And mindset, like anything, I mean, same with racing. It's all shows, you can't fake fitness, you can't fake speed, you can't fake mindset, and especially at the races. So people want to show that they're good at the races, but don't always do the homework. He's like, all right, I'll do it. Done. He's just that type of guy. And, that's what it takes to be a champion. And it's no surprise to us knowing what he's doing behind the scenes that, out in the public, it looks easy, but he does the work too. So it's cool.
Yeah, actually, what you talk about preparation there, it actually like just very lately, I've started working with a new a coach myself that just sort of almost fell in my lap. This guy, so I reached out to him about something totally different, and then it turns out that he's going to coach me for a while. And sort of more. I'm no super athlete, but I'm a fit for my age, I guess, and I try and I'm trying to be the best me. And yeah, he showed me some videos about some pro athletes that and the preparation they go into, and how it's all about once they get to the event, all the hard work's sort of already done. So yeah, very interesting to hear you say that. Yeah, that's it.
Well,
Yeah.
and the level of commitment, right, that it takes to be at that level, and you can tell that those who do the work, um, and those who don't, because those who do the work and want it, just show up every day for it, and that was Grant. As Steve said, he every day he was after what we asked him to do. We talked to him a week later and say, did you do this? Every day. It's a level of commitment that gets you the results, as we saw with Grant.
And I think to add in, Steve, I think the other thing that's interesting is when you look, behind the scenes, and, I'm more the ex-racer, so I do the riding side and some of the training side. Denise does the body and the mind. But, everybody asks, how long is it going to take to be a pro or a champion? I'm like, whatever it takes. You got to flip over every rock, look under everything, do everything in your power. And 90% still won't be a champion, not to give them a hard time. But like you still have to have that much relentless commitment to become your best, like you're saying, and like your coach. I think it's so cool. We love it. We're athletes ourselves and just studies of the sport and of human performance and becoming your best in anything. Doesn't even have to be sports. We just like, even in business or whatever, it's just like that journey is, it's, you want to be straight to the top. Who doesn't? But it's like that, it's never paved or never, not going every which way. And you have to stay in your pursuit with never giving up. So I think that's so cool.
It is, yeah. It really is. Like my interest in it is huge. And my story's like opposite to the people you're coaching. Like I've come from a very unwell, unhappy, unbelievably unfit, overweight, mid 30-year-old to the fittest I've ever been at 48 and the best headspace I've ever been in at 48 and all that sort of thing. So I've been on a journey from rock bottom, rather than I've never really been I mean, I've raced dirt bikes, not that well, but never really been a pro athlete. Even when I have raced, it was just turning up to have a go. So, but I do find the mindset stuff super super interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations on that, Steve, because, as Steve was just saying, like, mindset crosses over into everything that we do, and performance, crosses over into everything that we do. And I would say that probably when you apply this to your life and you come from a place where you're not happy and you're overweight, and it's just a really great example to how, when you set yourself to something, you can have what you want, you can be happy, you can be fit, you can do all those things. And so, I hear stories like that, and I think that's just an incredible success. But it takes that daily commitment, right, to it, and making the decision, and then making your way to the success of it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm certainly proud of myself. So and it's a one day I'll write my story, and I think it might help a few people that are overweight and unhappy in their 30s as well. But yeah, cool. I'd like to. So I know a lot about Steve. We did a show with Steve, and I was a fan of Steve from all his racing and that sort of thing. I'd like to know just a bit about you, Denise, how you got started into what you do. Like, how did it all come about?
In another lifetime, a long time ago, I was a springboard tower diver for University of North Carolina here in the States, and I was the kind of person that had no fear. I would just do anything. And I remember my first experience of fear came in my senior year in diving, and I really didn't even understand what it was. What is this feeling? What do I do with it? And there wasn't anybody, coaches, anybody around me that could help me as I was trying to explain what was happening in my mindset. Really, is what it was. It was just a mindset. And so, that was very early days, and I did a lot from there in sports. But it always intrigued me how the mind in sports, from there, I went into yoga, 30 years of yoga. 30 years ago, I trained in hypnotherapy. So it was kind of this parallel of mind body, really to understand the mind and body and human performance. And at the very onset of it, I started working with the elite athletes, like the San Diego Padres, or New York Jets, or NFL, MLB. I had the U.S. soccer team, and then a lot of individual athletes, and into the motorsports. But I just I'm fascinated with human performance and human consciousness. And I think that we really just scratched the surface of what we're capable of as human beings. And what I'm most fascinated by is, neuroscience is now doing so much research on human performance, and it's really aligning a lot to what I learned in the world of yoga, in the world of hypnotherapy. Things that were so far out on the fringe that a lot of people wouldn't do it. Even mindset, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was working with some of these teams, it was a really far stretch for people to accept mindset thinking that like something must be wrong with me if I'm going to do that. Quite the contrary. What I came to discover was it was those extraordinary minds that were always seeking to turn over every rock to be better. And I learned a lot from those type of people all the way through my career in mindset yoga, mindset and yoga. But what I heard from the greats, Steve, it was always interesting because I would say, what makes you so great? Why do you stand apart from anybody else? And they always inevitably said the same two things. Always. They said, nobody will beat me at the mental game. And I always remember to have fun. And so it's just something that's always been kind of with me when I would step away from athletes and go do something more in the yoga. I did international yoga retreats. I still do. I would always get pulled back into the world of athletes. And so over the years, I've really come to understand that they're probably one of the most fun people to work with because they're driven. They want it. They're going to do what you ask of them. And then they are really tapping those levels of human performance that we're talking about, right? Like these young athletes these days are life or death. They're doing things that can cause death, but they're just also on the other side of it, these remarkable elite extraordinary athletes. And so it's just been an incredible journey for me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love moto, but I love good stories. I love stories, and I love life stories, and especially positive ones. And I am definitely I'm all in on everything you're talking about there. Yoga is pretty special to me, which makes a lot of Aussie friends laugh and that sort of thing, because I'm about as far from the yoga stereotype as you can get when you look at me.
This one too,
They
But
laugh. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
but he does it.
but I do it regularly, and yoga. I credit yoga as one of the absolute key things that saved my life, like literally saved my life. So when I couldn't sleep at all and I was falling asleep behind the wheel and stuff like that, I was willing to try anything, and I can't remember why. I think maybe because my sister did yoga or something. I decided to try yoga, and I got a good night's sleep for the first time in months.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm still doing it now. 15 years later. So it's amazing. And the more I do pretty simple relaxation stuff. I do it particularly for the sleep and the mind rest, but also a good stretch. But I do particularly for my mind. A lot of people will say, "Oh, yoga. Oh, is that good for like your flexibility and that?" And I was, yeah, but I do it for my mind. Like 90% is I do it for my mind. So, and I absolutely love it. It is amazing the release I get from it of stress. I just get rid of stress. I even get rid of and people don't believe this, but I can even just like release physical pain doing yoga. Like it's amazing. I love it.
100%.
So
It is a lifesaver. Good for you to have found that and stayed with it. And the interesting thing about my athletes who stay with it, who do the practice and stay with it, and I say, why are you keeping with the yoga? For the flexibility, because we orthopedic surgeons know that injury rates went way down on teams that brought yoga in. But they always say, no, I do it for the mindset. Yes, the flexibility, the mobility, but more
hmm.
the mindset. So yeah, I'm with you on that. It's been a lifesaver for me too. When I first came to yoga, I was a triathlete. I had won world's outrigger in Hawaii when I lived in Hawaii. I was just I had become degenerative with my sports and could barely get off the floor. I kind of look like him now.
hey. Not that bad. She was never this bad, Steve. You can't.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm like a 2x4.
I,
Lord,
and so I was in Hawaii leading a program and they brought in a yoga person. I was thinking, yoga, like I'm an athlete, like this is going to be nothing. I had my ass handed to me. It was the hardest thing I ever did. And so I was really intrigued by it. And it took me, when I went after a certification for just one more certification to offer to my people, it opened up my it took me down a different path in my life and it changed my life. And the biggest thing that it changed for me was my mindset. Like you're saying, I just got opened into parts of myself, um, in ways that I could change behaviors, in behaviors that didn't serve or thoughts that didn't serve. And while I was already a hypnotherapist, so I understood that deep unconscious mindset, this was a practice that was working in that realm. And so I'm with you. I think, I always say to Steve, in fact, I just said it again yesterday after I got off my mat, this saves my life every time I do it. It's amazing.
It is amazing, yeah. And hypnotherapy, I did try that once, and it was successful. And it was probably the very first step of me getting on the right path, because I went to hypnotherapy to give up smoking. So that was, and it worked. I walked out of there, left my packet and my lighter on her desk for her to throw in the bin. So that
Nice. Yeah.
that certainly worked, and that was just a desperation. Like, oh, I've got to try something. I'll just. Some people said this works, so yeah. So, and I'm very much uh I love anything to do with you know healing yourself, natural therapies, all that sort of stuff over like I look at my mum and dad's generation, where I tell people about how many pills the doctor had my dad take it in his 30s. I remember he'd get his pills out at night and line them up on the counter and have him with his cup of tea. And he was still a fairly young man, but anything that was wrong, here's a pill, here's a pill, here's a pill. But these doctors never asked him, are you exercising? Are you, what are you eating? All that
Right.
sort of stuff. So it's yeah, I look at that and I'm sad for them too about that, because
Yeah. I
they've sort
know.
of missed out on a lot of good stuff that people nowadays are doing for their health. So
Yeah, in that generation, there's still a big buy-in to that, which in some cases it's necessary and it works, right?
yeah,
But the mind-body approach to wellness and nutritional, right, is what we're seeing in come about in ways that I think are starting to take a precedence. I hope that, we don't get fought by big pharma and all that's a
mm,
whole nother podcast.
yeah,
But it is that I remember reading a book. Uh, I can't remember the name of the doctor at the moment. Anyway, he had collected neuroscientists, psychologists, psychotherapists, anybody who had anything to do with mind, and they were asked, what do you think is the fastest way to make change in belief, behavior, brain? And it was unanimously decided that hypnotherapy was that way. But when you think about it, our thinking conscious mind is only 2 to 12% of our mind's capacity. And that deep realm of the subconscious mind is 88 to 92% of our mind's capacity. Why aren't we working in that realm? And the other thing that I think we're missing the boat on, but now starting to understand, because there's a lot of physicists and neuroscientists who are studying the body from the perspective of energetics. If we're 99.9% energy and 0.001% matter, why are we still looking at the matter? Why aren't we doing more of these energetic practices and working more in the energetic field? And so that's really starting to be looked at, and neuroscience has confirmed some things with the power of presence. Like that's where they're saying that's where the power lies, the present mind. The energy centers in the body, the seven main energy centers, and then of course, we have 92,000 energy channels in the body, but they are now quantifying the power that's in each of these energy centers. And when those are open and operating properly, the level of health and power, vital life force that the body can have. So it's coming, right? And we all love science, and if science says so, there's a lot more confirmation in what the yogis have been doing for since the beginning of time. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of people, especially Aussie men and that sort of thing. It's all voodoo, it's all hippie shit, it's all, they all just sort of laugh it off and that sort of thing. And it's hard to get friends and especially my dad. Like I've sort of given up there. It's funny. Even one of my sisters is a naturopath, and she can't even get dad to change his ways. So she's got him on a couple of different vitamins, and that's about it for him. Like, yeah, he'll just go to his general practitioner and see what
Look,
the
it's
doctor says.
really hard to change those beliefs. Like it's so hard to shift. But here's what we know: neuroscience now knows that the brain neuroplasticity happens until the day you die. My dad used to say, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks." He's now gone. He died at a young age, and I wish he was still here because I would say, "Hey, you know what, Dad? You actually can. Science says so." But here's the other thing that's happening, which I think is so cool, is that there's a lot of incredible athletes that are, as I was saying to you before, they're not ordinary, they're extraordinary. And if they were ordinary, doing ordinary things, they would be just out there, as ordinary as everybody else. But some of these athletes and they have their secrets. They're not telling everybody what they're doing, but I've worked with them, so I've learned as much from them as they from me. Like it's a symbiotic relationship. And
Mm.
some of the things that they're doing, they're extraordinary mindsets. They are turning over every rock, as I said, to figure out how to make themselves have that edge. And I'll tell you a quick story about a guy that we worked with from the San Francisco Giants a number of years ago. He, at the time, came on to the Giants as the highest paid pitcher in the history of baseball. And the Giants had not won a World Series since 1954, and this was 2010, 2010. And he comes onto the team, and he is sitting in vortexes in Arizona. He's sitting in steam rooms chanting and the recitation of what he intends to create. And it wasn't just about his performance, it was that he was going to create the right team, the right coaches, the right synergy with the right players for them to get a World Series. I mean, this young man was incredible. And he said, by the way, I wasn't the best choice for that contract, which at the time was like $130 million. I wasn't the best choice for that, but I knew I could get it. I knew I could. And, he just had this incredible knowing, but he talked to me about the energy centers and the energy, the vital life force that moved through him. He had certain names for it, which doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that you understand it and you understand how to harness it. And he was just this, you could feel his presence, you could feel his force when he came to a room. He was just so potent. But the San Francisco Giants went on to win 3 World Series in the time that he was on that team. And I look at that outside in going, there's no happenstance there. That's somebody making it happen.
Yeah, I certainly believe in that kind of thing. I don't know what the right words are for that sort of belief and believing things and then they happen. I'm not that educated on it, but I just sort of found that in my life, I just sort of stumbled across that in my life and then started to learn. So the better I looked after myself, treated other people, and the healthier I got, just the better things started happening for me. And then I would believe that I could do something, and it just sort of snowballed in my life. So on a small scale, I started to really believe in that sort of thing. And since then, it's particularly in fairly recent times, I've sort of learnt more and more about it. And what you say about energy, I've been saying for years, and a lot of people just like, think I'm weird or whatever. And I don't care. Like, I never care about what people think. But I since I was, so I was unbelievably, bad with chronic depression. And since I got well, and I like to say, I kicked the black dog's ass. I don't know if that's if the black dog is a term you
I
guys use. Yeah, I kicked its ass. And I feel people's energy since I'm well. Like, it's incredible how I feel people's energy. I can meet someone on the first day, and I can feel if they aren't doing well, particularly when they're not doing well. I can feel that energy of this person ain't doing well. Um, and then I can also feel if a person's doing has really good energy. I can just feel it. And I try and explain that to people who don't understand it. I just get like I'm crazy. But I certainly, I love all that sort of stuff. It's amazing.
look, Stay crazy, because there's more and more understanding to it. And that's why I tell you about that San Francisco athlete, because he makes things that seem so crazy and out on the fringe more acceptable to the younger people coming in. And now these young people are so much more open because these people have paved the way, you included, right? Some of these things sound really crazy. But when at this age and at this point with my study, I know that there are certain universal principles that apply to all of us. We're not exempt from these universal principles: gravity, light, energy, and when we begin to understand them, then we can put them to work in our lives. And I have been around the greats, not only in the athletes, the gurus, the sages, the people who make things look like magic, but they have instantaneous manifestation. And while I won't go down the road of woo too much, what we're doing is we're punching holes in our physics. And every time we punch a hole in our physics, Steve, what we find is quantum. And this quantum field is starting to permeate into the field of athletics through people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, or people who have a language to be able to bridge that neuroscience and that quantum physics to, well, how does this apply to people on the field? I've worked with some of the same athletes that he has, and and I see these extraordinary movements in people when they grasp this understanding of what they can do with it. And so, you know, uh, quantum very quickly is just an inverse of the time space continuum that we live in. It's completely inverted space time. And so what that means is that there's no past, present, future. It's that manifestation is instantaneous. And so everything that we apply, everything that we're thinking, feeling in certain states, we can bring about very quickly. It's and we're seeing it, and we're watching it happen, and we're watching athletes grasp these concepts and soar. It's just really incredible to see. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love it. I love it. It's yeah, like I'm right into all that sort of stuff. I'm reading books, and like, I'm someone that's constantly looking for education, and it's certainly something. All what you tell me about is all really sinking in, because I've been reading books and listening to people, and this new coach friend that I've just sort of found. I literally went to this guy because he was a good guy. I got told, "Oh, this is a really good guy. He does athlete blood tests," because there's a few things I wanted to check that your doctors doesn't check. The doctor looks at a 48-year-old guy, and he checks me blood pressure. He checks me cholesterol, the real basic stuff, like old school. But I wanted like everything checked. So I found this guy. This guy's really good. And then I get talking to him about my blood results, and we just chat, and we hit it off. And he's going, I also do like coaching and this sort of stuff. And then talking about athletes and talking about all this stuff you're talking about. It was like, all right, looks like you're my coach now. So yeah, it's great.
yes, it
It's
is.
great. Um,
Yeah.
next
Yeah, we
question. Oh, sorry, no, go, Steve. Yeah.
I know you're good. We did similar testing just like that. Denise and I and our daughter, same thing, the extreme blood testing, and our daughter fell in love with it. excuse me, she's 23, but she's been studying it and doing basically a college education on it, if you will. And it's insane what you can learn, just like anything, and pre everything, not only athletes to be at their peak performance, but cancers and stress and asthma and depression and anxiety
Mm.
and on and on and on. I mean, it's all pertained to, we think it's just like our mindset only, but so much is like you said, with the sleep and with the food and all these other things. So really being proactive instead of reactive. Even we talk about our parents, and say my parents, the
Yeah,
same as yours. They trust the doctor to the end, where we're kind of more, all of us kind of new school, if you will, and being proactive instead of reactive, not taking a pill because we did something wrong. It's like doing something before it happens is the whole idea. So pretty cool though.
yeah. Like not to get too deep about my story. This show's not about my story, but I genuinely feel like I have a second chance at life. That's sort of why I'm so proactive. Like there's a good chance that I'm not here, for a couple of little things. So I really feel like I've been given a second chance, and I sort of come out of the dark days as a different, better version of myself. So that's why I'm extremely proactive. Like I don't pass up any chance to improve myself. And what's so good is that I've been able to get to this stage, and while my kids are still living with me, while my kids are still, teenagers and so on, and I've been able to pass on a lot of good stuff to a lot of good habits to them. So it's
That's
really cool.
so, it's so beautiful. And, just to close that circle quickly, our daughter dealt with a lot of anxiety and asthma. And 1 week into these, after all the testing took away all the sugar, took away anything that turned into sugar in the food, in 1 week's time, she had no more anxiety, zero asthma, zero nausea. She'd been to the doctor many times for it. They blamed it on so many different things that wanted to do anti-anxiety meds. And she was like, no. So she said to me, Mom, like, think about how many young people have to suffer because of their foods, because of what they're eating. And, so it moved her so much. She went into the study of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, sugar is I could definitely do a couple of podcasts worth on what I think about sugar. So like, and it's still like it's like sugar's my weakness, and some people it's been alcohol, some people it's been different things. I was a cigarette smoker, but I still think sugar was my biggest weakness when I was at my worst. Like I was a anxiety eater, and it is just, yeah, it's poison, but it's a poison that any shop you go into, any gas station you go into, it's just everywhere, So it's
Really hard to take it out of our foods. It's in
yeah,
everything.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it's so hard to avoid. You go to any, you go, and people innocently, it's so innocent. People go to I'll go to a family function, and my sister's made something that's all sugary. I have one of these, like it's a tough thing. Is like people aren't, it's like I sort of say it's like if you were some sort of a drug addict and you just go to a friend's place and they're just passing around drugs, like that's what the sugar is to me. It's like,
Well, that's exactly what it is. If the FDA introduced sugar today, they would have to classify it as a drug, not a food.
Mm,
So
yeah,
it's not addicting. Yeah, it is a drug.
yeah,
There's a
yeah.
there's a great, just to close that one. There's an Aussie who did That Sugar film. Have you seen it?
No,
Oh, it's fantastic. That Sugar film. He's from Australia. Watch it. He comes into America to point out our problems with sugar. He's absolutely right.
yeah, yeah, and it's a tough thing because the sugar industry is a big industry in Australia too, especially up north. Like sugarcane is the bread and butter for a lot of farmers up north. So yeah, it's a tough one. As well as a lot of down here. There's a lot of farmers making their money out of seed oils, and that's another subject. So um,
Other podcast on that too, Steve.
yeah, true. But anyway, I wanted to just get a bit of a so if somebody comes to a Steve Hatch Racing Power of the Mind coaching school, just tell us a bit about that. What does a day look like? What does the camp look like?
So yeah, great question. We're getting ready to do our fourth year of camps down in Florida for the off season. Um, so typically it depends what we're after. This one that we usually push in the off season is really to get them clear, and I'll let Denise talk about the goals and stuff on the mindset side, but on the rider, and we kind of built this out of default, like a lot of things, because I wish I had it back when I was racing. So it's basically almost a month boot camp, and we start with some physical training. Denise does the yoga and stretching to begin with. Denise, I'll have her talk on the mindset, but then it's into the riding side of it. Um, with some pretty big days, a mix and match. It's like anything. If you do the same thing after 3 months or 90 days periodization, your body could go up to begin with, but then it plateaus off. So it's trying to keep the body guessing and changing every day. So, but a normal day kind of looks like that. Starts with the mindset I'll have Denise talk about in the yoga, and then we go to the riding side, and then at the end of the day, after doing motos and training, and I don't let them dab or flail around, because if you're not practicing perfect, you're not going to be perfect in the race. So form and structure and all that is huge, and I'm all about that on the riding side. And then after that, right before we're done for like the last hour, hour and a half, we basically do more cardio, circuit training, core, lower body, upper body, to really blast them one more time, and then they're done. So it's only a 6 hour day, kind of like the Navy SEALs. We don't really tell them exactly what we're doing, and we change it every day on them so that they have to be mentally strong. And then I'll go let Denise go into the mindset typical day, but it's gnarly and really cool. People love it. We love doing it, obviously, just like you. We're a big fan of people becoming their best selves.
Yeah, so we start at the foundation, which is breathing. Like, you think of as an athlete, there would be people would understand how to breathe, quite the contrary. It's only something that's really just started to come into even the athletics, because the science is now out there. There's been some study. And so we start with that foundation of proper breathing, breathing to bring the nervous system down, engage parasympathetic nervous system, breathing to bring the nervous system up, breathing to make the mind more even. The mind is always doing what the breath is doing. So if you are breathing deep, even, long, steady breaths, well, then the wave of the mind, which is what it does, focuses on 9 to 12 things at any given times, all over the place. It begins to even out. The waves might be a little bit less. And so we start there. Like, let's just understand how to breathe so you have more oxygen, more VO2 max, greater lung capacity, and a steadier mind. Now you're going to have more awareness of what you're doing out there. And then we go into visualization, because visualization is not something that's just in the mind, it's a physiological practice. So in other words, if you're visualizing a start, the muscles that you would use to actually do that start are firing while you're visualizing. So there's blood going to the muscles of the body, right?
Mm.
So we do a lot of visualization, and then we understand uh, our patterns. What are you thinking out there in practice? What are you thinking when you take it into a race? Because there are certain times of our day when the doorway into the deeper mind is open. So as I was saying earlier, you have that conscious mind, 2 to 12% of your thinking capacity. That's where you're practicing. You have to think your way through your practice. You have that deeper mind, the subconscious, 88 to 92%. That's where you should be racing. Like, that's automatic. You've practiced enough. When you get out there on the racetrack, thinking mind is gone. It's the subconscious that's doing the racing. But the in between part, that critical mechanism, is like the guard at the gate, the gate of the subconscious mind is formed fully by the time you're a teenager. So if I come in and say to you, hey, you know what, Steve, like, you're going to have this incredible season this year, and you're probably even going to win every race. You could go, that's great, Denise. I really want to do that, but it's never been done and I don't believe it. So what we have to do is bypass those screens of perception. Like, we already have our screens of perception. They are formed and in place, and they're pretty solid. And so to up your game to develop something more about yourself mentally, you have to go through that doorway when the guard at the gate is gone or asleep or off duty, and get into that deep unconscious mind and reprogram, which is you did in your hypnotherapy with giving up smoking, or you do all the time. I can hear it in your voice cues. Um, but there are 4 times during our day when that doorway is open. One is when we're in relaxation, which you experienced in hypnosis. The other time is right before you go to sleep, right when you wake up. It's a hypnagogic state. That little dude at the gateway's still sleeping. Highly emotionalized states. The start line is one of the times when that doorway is open, and then physical demand on the body, training, um, racing, and trauma. Trauma is another one. But what happens in those times is that when that doorway opens, you need to be really clear about what you're letting into it. And so the nonverbal communication, the self um, talk, the people around you, negative or positive, are all going to have a greater impact during those times when that doorway is open. So, creating that awareness through breath, through the practice of yoga, through visualization, and then, what do you want? Like, what are you after this year? And if you're after a championship and you're after being more confident and knowing that you're going to get that championship, you can't be you can't be focused on that for an hour a day, and then the next 12 hours focused on something negative and defeating yourself, right? Because that predominant thought is going to be your habit. It's going to harden into that habit. So it's really about, having an awareness of what we're saying to ourselves in those very important times, and what we're letting in from other people around us.
I'm all about everything you just said. Yeah, I understand totally. I hope a lot of listeners do too, because it's such a powerful thing, like the yeah, geez, I could go on and on about all that and how that connects to my own journey, So, but yeah, it's
Really
amazing that
change your life through it, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yep, yeah, just yeah, amazing stuff, and like it's amazing to the to have you guys Steve's experience on the bike, and yourself, Denise, and people can come and they're really getting the full package coming to one of your schools, aren't they? It's amazing. There's a lot of great riding coaches out there, but yeah, what you guys are putting together, I'm really impressed. Yeah, really impressed. If I lived a bit closer and you were doing some schools for old slow guys, I'd be all about it. So
Hey, you can come in for the study. Let's go.
Yeah, come
yeah,
on. They
yeah,
make
yeah,
flights every day, as you know, to Florida or New York.
yeah,
But we do get the full package, that's for sure. We do like a certain level of commitment to be able to work with, because we're intense. We bring the whole thing. So if
yeah,
you're not really ready to step up to yourself and your sport or your life, we're probably not the people for you. But when you're really ready to make that commitment, we're the ones that are going to be in that corner with you to give the whole package, the whole thing, because it all goes together, right? Like it's, you can do it a piece at a time. You can do the riding coach, and you can do the training in the gym, and you can, piece it together. And it's a process of past, present, future. It takes a period of time to get there. But, when you put it all together, you get the whole package. Like we were saying, you just see people soar. Like, you watch Grant Davis, and I mean, I don't want to take responsibility for what Grant did, but Grant put it together. Like, he was ready and he seeked it, and he put all those pieces together, and then he just, his riding guys, who are some of the top guys, are going, "What are you doing? What are you up to? What's going on there?" You know?
yeah. That's good. That's good. When the rivals are asking what's going on, that's a really good thing. Like I know just from anytime someone turns up at the start of a season and they're like way better than last year, everyone's like going, "Whoa, geez, what's going on? What's happened here? And I've seen it in young riders and never known why, and whatever it is, I've seen kids that were just, this sort of mid-pack kid on their 85, and then their first year on the 250F, they're like podiuming, and it's like, what happened? Like, what happened? You grew a bit, but what else happened? So yeah, and it's probably more what how their mind and the work they're putting in and all that sort of thing than just their natural skill that they were relying on. So
It's true. And Steve and I were talking about, like, in Steve's time in the off-road, there were just guys out there loving their sport, loving what they were doing. They were just out there doing it well. But then all this information started to come into that sport, even in the off-road world, and it just really upped the game. Even hydration, like just the understanding of hydration, because so many people were dehydrating and ending up in the hospitals. And, so as this information started to come in, you could see the levels and the speed at which these guys increased their capacity to the sport.
yeah, hydration's an amazing one. That was, like all just about any health thing you can think of. I've been gradually ticking boxes over the last, decade and a half, and hydration was a huge one. I was having all these physical strains and things that wouldn't heal, and I was trying different, normal doctor stuff and all that sort of thing. And one was I had really bad plantar fasciitis or whatever it's called. I had this crook foot, and I made a diet change, and with that diet change was making sure my hydration was up. And within a month or so, my foot was fine, and I hadn't changed anything else. That was one thing that I always blew. I'd been to every type of physical. I've been to osteos, physios, podiatrists, everything. And they were, like some of them were okay, some of them were really bad, and nothing was getting better. And I was thinking, and a lot of people were like, oh, that takes forever to heal and all that. And then it was a coincidence because I was like, right, I need to change my diet again, and I haven't focused on hydration yet, so I've got to focus on hydration. And my foot just got better, and it's been better ever since. So
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know. Yeah.
Fantastic story. And, it's that hydration is responsible for and affects every process in your body. How could we not be looking at that, especially in the realm of medicine, if it affects every process in your body? And your fascia has to have moisture, right?
Mm.
So it has to be moist, it has to be hydrated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's amazing, That's when I get onto my dad about his hydration because he's he's an old guy and he's not real mobile, and the more he drinks, the more he has to get up and go to the toilet, and he doesn't, so he doesn't drink.
Problem.
Oh,
Yes.
and I say to him, that's you're so sore and so stiff because you're drying out. But anyway, my dad's another story. Love him to bits, but he's frustrating. Yeah, that's it.
Another podcast. No, I understand that. But, also it leads down that road of electrolyte. And, there's so much more understanding of even that in performance, right?
Mm, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not just the water, it's the electrolytes. And that changed, that changed my life too. Like on the bike, I was a lifetime leg cramper. And sometimes forearms, but usually legs. Like no doubt at some stage I would be down especially in like an off-road race. There'd be at some stage where I'd be standing up for half a lap with my tip of my toe on the peg, stretching out my leg, as I'm trying to navigate single trails, stretching out my leg and screaming in pain, because you don't want to stop. And all these leg cramps, and every time also on the drive home at some stage, I'll be like, whoa, leg cramp. And since I started doing proper electrolytes, I've never had a leg cramp on the way home during like three. I could do like, and the biggest test I remember I did a Insta post about it. I did a 3-hour training loop, just doing a loop, and it was 35 degrees, which is what, like 95 degrees in your temperature. And I had my electrolytes up, and I never cramped, no problems. And it was just like, and my shirt, my whole gear, like my whole gear was like wet, like I got out of a pool. That's how much I'd sweat. But I was treating it like a dummy race, So I was stopping and getting fluids and everything, and yeah, and no cramps. So it's amazing. Even an old friend of mine who I did a race with last year, we did a race where we were both. It was a 3 hour, but it was one where you do it as a team. We were like in the over 80s class, and we're actually, our combined age was actually over 100. We were like the oldest. I was 47 at the time. He was 53, and he was doing it tough. And I'm like, dude, you got electrolytes? And he goes, oh, no, back in the, he was really fast back in his day, like really fast. And he's like, no, we just always drank water. We might eat some lollies and drink water and all that stuff. I'm like, no, dude, because I was mixing electrolytes in the morning. He's like, Steve, what's all that stuff? What are you doing? And I'm like, dude, you want something like into this stuff? And I remember at the end of that race, like I was pretty worn out too. It was a really hard race. But he was, like he was lying under a tree, like, just dripping water. Like, you okay, mate? It's an amazing thing. Yeah, all these things. And I still know some older riders that just know, because that used to be always the thing in Australia anyway, was just water and lollies, like sugary lollies. So when you're getting worn out, you grab a lolly. I was still doing that right up until I got onto the electrolytes. I'd have a bag of lollies and I'd hit the sugar and the water. And I thought that was like I thought that was, what everybody did, So, and it,
But seriously, an imbalance of electrolyte in the body has put people on life support, and it happened to one of his teammates. It's serious, and
mm,
and I think that while all these, as I was just talking about off road, like the hydration understanding came in, and nutrition understanding, and then the testing for nutrition, blood work, and then certain skill work, because these guys turn around and give it back and teach the skill, and so it just keeps climbing. But I feel like one of one of the things that's really starting to permeate now is the mindset. It's
yeah,
because it's more accepted and it's more available. But it's coming into really all sports, and not in the way of like something's wrong with me, as we were talking, but how can I get an edge through my
yeah.
thinking and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
power.
way past, just getting well. If you're unwell with mentally, it's more just actually you're already a gun athlete. We can make you even much better if you do this. Yeah, I understand. Like that's I've been. People still ask me, like, how are you? Which is great that people ask, because I ask people how they are, with their mental space and that sort of thing. And people ask me, and I always say, look, I can't say I'm 100%, because I can get better. I know I can just keep getting better and better. So I just, like, I'm 95. I'm great. I'm 95%. But don't worry that I say 95, because I'm just like, I know I can just get better and better and better all the time. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Righto, it's time for an ad read. Gutsracing.com. That's a really easy website to remember. Guts Racing, the best seats in the world. All over the world, you've got, like, in Europe, you've got Kaiser Wolf winning world championships. In the United States, you've got RJ Hampshire winning Supercross titles. Down here, we've got Jed Beaton on all the CDR Yamaha team using Guts seats. In fact, throughout the Aussie Pro pits, there's probably more bikes with Guts seats than more bikes without. If you want to be like Kaiser Wolf, you want to be like Ken Roxon, like you want to be like Mookie, you want to be like privateer hero Scott Meshy, you got to get yourself a Guts seat. Obviously, Guts provide, they sell seat covers. Yeah, everyone knows that. They also do complete seats, the ultralight seat foam, seats with seat bumps, wide wing seats, seats with ballistic material in the knee area if you are a knee brace guy who's tearing up your seat. If you can think of a color, they have it. The website is amazing. You go on there, you can choose the color for the side, for the top, for the. I always say stripes. I always say ribs, not stripes. Um, and you can also get a Velcro fitment seat if you don't want to tackle the job with a staple gun. Speaking of the tackling the job with a staple gun, your gut seat cover will come with a QR code. You scan that, it will take you to a video where you'll see probably Andy Gregg himself showing you the best way to install that seat cover. It's amazing. I watched that video. I actually used that process to do the put my gut seat onto my YZ250. So amazing. You don't get that sort of service with too many companies, do you? Even just while I'm thinking about putting the seat cover on, when I put the seat cover on my Yamaha, even if you do have a Yamaha, a 4-stroke Yamaha, even comes with the tank cap cover, a cover for the tank cap cover, which is amazing. That suits the same style, same gripper style as the top of your seat, just so it's just seamless. Looks an absolute treat. As Privateer Hero Scott Meshy says, they are a butt gripper and they will make you a ripper. So make sure you get around that. Gutsracing.com. That's a really easy website to remember. Gutsracing.com. All right, let's get back to the fantastic chat that we're having with Steve and Denise Hatch. Cheers. Awesome. Steve, do you work on bike setup much with the riders? Do you get into that sort of stuff, or?
Yeah, I can. I try not to. No, I try not to because every rider is so different.
Mm,
But it's like us going to a gym and having 10 different trainers for the three of us. They're gonna have a little bit of their own opinion. So I'm definitely opinionated on the way I like a bike setup. But I do help them, and especially in a nutshell, in general,
yeah,
80% with the bike better with the bars and levers and how much extra play in the throttle and you name it. And I can do a lot of it. I mean, that's all I did, obviously, for years and years at racing. So, we always thought, well, this is kind of old school thinking, but it's still true. I believe it's 80% rider and 20% bike. But at the sea level, you can have a junky bike and still have enough, obviously, athleticism and speed as a rider to overcome that. But as you get up to the pros, you can't be riding a 15% bike against the guys that are on 19 or 20% bikes. So you don't have that much of a leeway. So yeah, we do work on that, especially with the faster riders. They definitely are searching. And it does make a big difference, as if you ride a bike for 3 hours wide open in a GNCC and it can handle 10, 20, 30% better and not feel like you're going to kill yourself or beat you up, you can go that much faster. And you're not even, we're talking mindset, obviously, mostly, but even on the riding side, if you're scared of every single tree root or rock as the bike's going to throw you into the trees and hurt you, you're not going to hit it that fast. I don't care who you are. We're all not that stupid. And the subconscious mind's going to go, hey, I don't think so. You hit that last week and it sent you into the tree, fourth gear pinned and broke your back. You're not going to hit that the same way again. So bike setup is a really big one. And we do kind of do an overview, which I think is huge for everybody. And there's so much you can learn, as you know, on all
yeah,
of these modalities. But bike setup is such a big one because a lot of people don't know much. And I was guilty myself. I don't touch anything because I didn't know what I was doing as a kid. So I didn't click any clickers. I didn't try anything. I used all my older buddies that were, beating me and faster. I used all their clickers or did what they did. But then I learned towards the, middle of my career, like I ride different than them or, that worked for 5 years ago, but I'm a way different rider now on speed or different stuff. So yeah, bike setup's a huge one.
yeah. I guess so you just sort of, if someone's doing if someone's got something like really wrong on their bike, you'd pull them up and say, hey, try this, but you don't get into the fine details. Yeah,
Well, with, a lot of times we have like 10 to 30 riders we're working with, so they're all different. But
yeah,
if I'm doing a one-on-one lesson, absolutely. Quite often I'll ride their bike for them and be like, I wouldn't ride this thing down in the mailbox. It's gonna kill you. And they're like, oh man. I said, don't take that as a bad thing. That's a good thing. Because if it feels that bad for me, we can get that so you're actually hitting these bumps and it's absorbing them and not kicking you sideways or into the trees. You're gonna be bored to death and go way faster and not be with a death grip and clamped and everything else like you would be if the bike's a pile.
Yeah, sometimes you got to ride someone else's bike, and then you go, "Oh wow!" Like, I mean, not now. Nowadays, we all sort of know a bit, but back in the day, like when you were young, when I was young, sometimes you'd ride someone else's bike, and you'd be like, "Oh wow, this is how they can be." You know, what am I doing? You know, like, because I remember back in the day, just make your suspension stiff, make it stiff so it can take the big hits. You know, and then you learn, oh no, go softer, softer, go softer again. You know, like, is it? Yeah. It's it's crazy, isn't it? Well, I always get picked on for how I run my levers. I say picked on because I don't care, so it's not really getting picked on. But I always get comments on how I run my lever. I run a real weird lever position, but it's comfortable for my arms. So I don't know. And that's one that you'd probably get a laugh at. I run them real low, like real low. So they're usually sticking out the bottom of my hand guards, running real low. But like I like to get right over the front of the bike with like elbows up, and that's kind of where my fingers are pointing, So it's a funny
Well,
thing.
mine used to be straight down on my national enduro bike when I won the championship on the Suzuki, because they had such big tanks back then. And to sit on the gas cap, like way on the front to get them to turn, you had to be way up there. And the old seats made you way down in the middle or farther back of your bike. So you couldn't turn because all your weight's on the back of the bike. So it wouldn't allow it to actually turn quickly. So I'm with you. I still have my national enduro #1 bike, and the levers are almost straight down. And everybody that sits on it goes, "What were you thinking?" I'm like, I had to live up there on the gas cap to get the thing to turn, or I would be never turned through all the tight woods. So I'm with you. And then I've more from there. Mine have come up and kind of more almost straight out, more for GNCC is so fast and so rough. It's almost like motocross. So that's a
Yeah,
little different than having to really weight the front end and tighter stuff. But I'm with you. So I'm guilty by people look at my stuff and back then, especially even I do, and go, wow, whatever it takes though. Like I said, that's why bike setups still a preference. I always say the comparison, and we've been blessed to work with some of the greats, like Caleb Russell's bike. I'd ride his, and I wouldn't ride it down to my mailbox. It was so stiff and different than what I liked. But like a Ryan Sipes or Taylor Roberts, other top riders of ours, I'd ride either their bike tomorrow in a race. They set it up almost identical to what I liked. So it's kind of preference, and all of them go fast. So it really comes down to really what makes you happy.
yeah. I just one thing you said before that one of the things I really love about the sport is how much the rider influences it. Like there's not too many motorsports, maybe no other motorsports apart from dirt bikes, where the rider matters so much more than the machine, isn't it? Like, yeah, if you look at even MotoGP guys, like if you're not on the fastest team that year, and the whatever year the Ducatis, 10 kilometers an hour faster down the straights or whatever, like they're just way behind from the start, whereas when it comes to especially nowadays, all the brands of dirt bikes, they're all good, man. They're all good. Like Kenny Roxon's out there winning. He can win a race on the Suzuki that's like hasn't changed in like a dozen years, So it's I love that. And even at a junior level, that's great too, because you'll see the kid. I love the kids. I love the kids and the families that are struggling, but the kids going great. And I always always brag for those kids. The bike's a bit rough. That's just that dad's got an old truck, like, and they got secondhand gear and taped up boots and all that sort of thing, and they go out there and they win. I can't get enough of that. They beat. And I'm not picking on the kids whose parents are wealthy. Hey, that's their good luck and good on their parents for getting to that position in life. But it's always cool to see the secondhand bike winning because of the rider. It's not just. I mean, I raced cars for a little while many years ago, and there was so much in just the biggest budget. The biggest budget meant so much. Like if you're flat out down the straights and you get passed because they got a bigger budget for budget equals horsepower, like what are you going to do? That's the one of the cool things about dirt bikes, man. Yeah, I've seen guys, jump. I remember a kid once on an off-road race. Something was wrong with his YZ250, and his mum's Honda trail bike, CRF 230, I think it was there. and he came second in the in the last race of the day on that. It was just like, there
Wow.
you go. Like he couldn't win it, but geez, he wasn't far off winning it. Still came second on that, and it was just there's the rider, So it's
Steve has that story. His background was not from, there wasn't a lot of money put into his racing. He just had to make it. But one of the things as far as how mindset meets that is that he just kept himself in such a great frame of mind. It's what I loved about him. It's why I married him. He just was so positive all the time. And that positivity and his ability to just get on that whatever he had to race with, even if it was, had to go get some tires out of the garbage site, whatever, he just always stayed positive about it, and it got him a factory ride. And and we say to young people all the time, because it's so easy, it's human. It is more of a human condition to think that we don't have enough, we're not enough. Somebody else has got more than I do, they have better opportunities. That's just a human condition. And that kind of thinking is going to keep you right into that space of never being able to climb that your way up. And so, just to meet that, I love that story about, no matter what you have or what you don't have, you still show up and race your heart out, and it you can make it happen.
yeah, it's fantastic. Fantastic. Couple more questions. I'm really interested in something that I hear both. So, do you put more weight in working on someone's weaknesses or in solidifying on their strengths? That's something I find interesting because I've heard really good arguments for both.
You want to start?
No,
Or want
that's
me
yours.
to- Um, I'm always, well, I think of it as far as like a racer, like a hub of a motorcycle, the inside hub. Then you have all the spokes going out. So you have spokes all the way around the wheel. And if your spokes, and it's called a spoke evaluation actually, if your spokes go out and say you have one, say it's conditioning at a scale of 1 to 10, and say it's a 2, you're not very fit. So that spoke's a short spoke. The next one, let's say it's, nutrition, all of a sudden that one's like a 10. So if you go all the way around like 50 things, your wheel is going to have in and out, not very round when you go to do it, if you have a lot of things that are not good. So with a pro, I always work on their weaknesses uh, to begin with. Most pros are obviously pretty darn good at a lot, but say they're 7s and 8s on most things, and a few things are a 5 or a 2. We go right towards them to make sure, because that's the quickest way, in my opinion, to improve. And I mean, there's like you're saying, the argument like, oh, well, keep going better on what you're good at. But at a certain point, especially at a pro level, in my opinion, you already should be a 9 or a 10 all the way on all your spokes. So I'm always seeking, when I get a new rider, the fastest way to start the improvement and to try to jump them up in their performance is definitely working on their weaknesses, in my opinion and my experience. I was really good at training. I was really good at, like Denise said, kind of the mindset, no matter what I had or didn't have. But, I wasn't good at, technical stuff. I'm a little shorter guy. So a lot of these things that I didn't like, because I was terrible at, pivot turn 180s or different things over logs that were slimy or different stuff. I spent hours and hours crashing on my head to get better. So then in races, and especially in enduros, you might go over, especially back here in the Northeast, 20 to 50 slippery logs in a race. And since I didn't have to crash on every single one of the 50 or 100 as I got better, I actually did better in the results. So that was kind of my argument for doing it. But I can see both sides. But for me personally, I think it's the weakness that will help you the most, especially if they're a big weakness.
Yeah, cool. I lean that way myself for sure. Yeah, um, that is. But I've heard some pretty good arguments about sort of focusing on strengths. But yeah,
And I think it's important to know your strengths, right? Like I mean, as far as mindset, you really need you really need to parse out where your superpowers are and what your strengths are. And you also need to parse out where am I not, where am I weak? And work on that area. It's my thinking in the mindset.
And then, in my opinion, to add to that, like say fitness is the thing that you're really good at, definitely play to that strength. So, meaning in a race, I would use that to my strength. I'd go so hard and so fast that I'd get rid of 90% of the guys that weren't as fit as I was. if that makes sense. So I'm
Yeah.
a little bit of both. I think to try to quickly get you better and look at your program from a 30,000 feet of a rider underneath you, you can see where they could go, hey, these 10 things you should really focus on. Because everybody says to us, what should I be doing? Right? The perfect, question. Well, humanness has us doing what we love to do and we're really good at, right? Like I love seat hops through the woods and finding cool little jumps and stuff to hit. But I'm already decent at that. I need to be working on those slimy logs at an angle, third gear pin that I can bunny hop over or, not get deflected. So I think those things, play into it. Work to your strengths, use them to an advantage in the real race or whenever you can. But when you're sitting around wondering what to do, definitely work on your weaknesses. Because if you're already nines and tens on everything else, and you got some that are twos and threes, if you can get those to a 6 or a 7 or closer to a 10, you're way better off.
Yeah, I definitely need to work on, and like I'm a C grade rider, so I'm getting better all the time still at my age, but I don't work on the weaknesses enough, and it's probably more of a just it's a time thing for me. Like I always make sure I get in some seat time, just doing hard laps because I want to keep the fitness up, because the fitness is sort of my strength. And then I always just run out of time because I've got other stuff to do, 2 businesses and everything, and I don't get time to practice, the technical stuff that I should be, practicing, slow wheelies and log hopping and all that sort of stuff that I'm terrible at. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah.
But I'd suggest and challenge you, Steve, to do that instead of doing some of the endurance. Take one day a week where you're just write down 3 things and do them for 10 minutes each, only 30 minutes of your day or whatever it is. I tell my riders that a lot too. And, some of them do it full time for a living, but some of them don't. So I'm like, you only have an hour a day, let's say. You got to make them count. So don't do the same thing every day either. Because, like, to your point, it's great that you're cool with endurance and you like that and you love riding, but mix it up. You should have hard, long days like that. Endurance. You should have speed days. You should have skill days, in my opinion. And then you're doing different things and improving every time you throw your leg over your bike.
Yeah, I'll definitely, I'll try. So I'll have to remember Steve told me to do that. So that's it. I train on my own too. So I train on my own, which is it's always a harder thing when you train on your own because there's no one sort of pushing you. I know when I used to ride with other people and that, they'd be like, doing stuff. And it was like, oh, we've got to do this. We've got to practice this. So it's a harder one when you are the Lone Ranger out there. Yeah. I liked just a comment really because you already answered this earlier, Steve, about I was going to ask, do your own mistakes of the past motivate you to teach? And you answered that, so I think that's really cool. I know I've heard other guys say that where they wish they had what they're teaching when they were young. Yeah, so it's got to give you a lot of job satisfaction. There is the job satisfaction, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, and I joke, but it's truthful that I'm like usually working with a rider. I've been there, wrecked that, done it wrong, and figured out how to do it right or figured it out. So I don't know all the answers, but with all of us being older, the advantages we've learned usually the hard way, and that usually sticks more. So I think that's the big one that's fun to give back because you're like, you could do it that way, but it's going to be more painful or longer. It's going to take you instead of 3 years, it's going to take you 10 years. So I think
Yeah.
that's the big one to give back.
A lot of satisfaction, and I sort of resonate with that a little bit. Like I just informally find myself giving mental health advice a lot to, especially to younger friends. Nowadays I get asked, and I speak because I'm so open about, and I've shared a lot of my story. And I always say, look, this is what worked for me because I'm not the expert on everything, but this is what worked for me. And there's some things have really strong belief on that can help everyone. And but yeah, I've definitely done all the mistakes. I've done the mistakes and learned from it. So I think that it is the knowledge you gain. I mean, that's where you gain knowledge is mistakes. That's the best way to learn. Hard way, but the best way. And you get enormous satisfaction of then passing that on, and then that younger person, if they listen to you, won't have that same mistake that you had. So it's huge. It's a huge job satisfaction thing. Yeah, amazing, amazing. I might just sneak in. Sorry, I've gone a bit longer than I said, but just I'm really enjoying this. This is amazing. Just one, that's sort of a fun one. And I reckon I almost reckon I know the answer, but are kids or adults easiest to train?
So on the bike or mental, or you're asking both?
Oh,
Kind of?
either. Maybe an answer from both of you, because I think I already know the answer. I might be surprised though.
Go ahead.
Oh, and the mindset kids, 100%, they're wide open. They don't have those strong beliefs in place yet, so that you have to work through that screen of perception that we were talking about. Kids are just open to programming and they get it so quickly. They can just put it right to work and have it and yeah, and not reject a lot of things that you're telling them because they have a belief that is maybe opposite of what you're trying to give them. They're just wide open and receive it.
I-
In fact, for mindset, sorry, I'll just say this, that for mindset, I like to work with younger people because if you can get to somebody young and form those good mental habits, then their habits that will send them into their life in a completely different way. In fact, a lot of the greats, the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordans, or some of these greats had mindset training at a very young age.
So I think for riding, I've got a little bit different answer. It could be, notoriously, obviously, kids, but in the same, if you're just talking about age, it it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, if they're coachable, is what I always say. And a lot of times, quite often, the ability to be brand new at a sport, like especially dirt bikes, in one day, if I can take a complete beginner, whether they're 10 years old or 30 years old or 50 years old, in one day I can put them on a bike without any, it's getting dark back here, we're turning the lights on. If
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
can put them on a bike and form them with their body position and their skills and mold them, in one day I can make them 50% better because they don't know anything wrong. So for me, once it's usually in general an older rider, it's tough because they've got 30,000 hours of habits, riding with their elbows down or not clamping the bike with their legs, or all the stuff that I deal with daily with riders. So mine's a little different. It's more, if it was a beginner, I'd rather take a beginner any day of any age. Is way easier to train than a pro. A pro is fun to train for somebody like me. I love training pros, but we're looking for that 0.001% in an 8-hour day. Where if you're a beginner, you could get them 50% better in one day. And even the second day, you could get them another 20% better. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it went the way I thought it was going to go. Like even like in a former life, I was the boss of a lot of people, and I loved working with the 15, 16-year-olds, and it was their first job, and that, and they're so open minded and keen to learn, and whereas I had employees older than me, and they just knew everything, and they wouldn't listen to everything, and even when I've been involved, running and organising off-road races, and the kids are just great. Like if there sometimes we'd have like if we're lucky enough with the right location, we'd have a junior loop, a junior site, and a senior site. And I'll run the juniors, no worries, like for sure, because and it's also the energy. Like one of the things I say, if you could bottle the energy on the start line of a 65s off-road race, if you could bottle that energy, that would fix every problem in the world. Like it is amazing. I love that. The 50 kids, they're still a little bit messy. That can get a little bit hectic because some of them it's their first go or their second go. But by the time they hit 65s, they're still crazy and still just full energy, full positivity. It's just amazing. Yeah, just amazing. And then by the time they get to 85s, you do start to get a few kids that know everything. And then it goes downhill from there. And by the time you get to the over 35s and the over 45s guys, oh my God. And I was like I race these guys sometimes, and I was like, oh, you guys, will you just behave yourselves yeah, crazy. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. All right, guys. Yeah, I could, like I said, I've never had a podcast where I was so easy to write down so many questions, and I've gone through most of them. I don't want to keep too much of your time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, and yeah. One day, I think you got your trainings might have got onto my list of things I want to onto a bucket list. I think because it sounds super interesting, and if you could put up with a nearly 50-year-old C grader out there making all the things go a lot slower, then I'll have to get there at some stage.
We'd
Yeah,
like
it's been an absolute pleasure. Couple of fun things I do to close out the show. Steve might remember this. I always ask the US guys or girls to give me your best Aussie accent. So this time I'm going to pick on Denise because Steve's already done it. So give me your best Aussie accent. Give me an Aussie saying.
Found it very hard to understand when you first started talking.
So give us a just give us a g'day, mate.
Good day, mate.
Geez, that's actually not too bad, Denise. That was pretty good.
It's coaching, Steve.
That was actually pretty good. Yeah, yeah. I like it. It's funny. Sometimes people are just terrible. Often when Americans try and be an Aussie, they sound British. But yours was pretty good.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a big thing over here. It must be some TV series, but all the young girls are speaking in Aussie accents now. They
It's
love you.
it'd be Bluey. I think it's Bluey. There's
Oh,
a
maybe.
there's a
Right.
cartoon that's really big. They're called Bluey, and it's about a blue heeler dog, which is a Australian cattle dog, and his mates and all that's a cartoon, and it's huge in the US. So that's
Mhm.
probably where it's come from. And it's funny, same thing. I remember my daughter. She's a real chip off the old block. She's a female miniature Steve. But when she was little, we have a lot of US television, and sometimes she would say words with this really heavy US accent, and I'll be like, "What have you been watching?" And she'd be like, "Oh, such and such in such show says it this way or whatever." But yeah, it
It's great.
it's funny, yeah. And then the last thing I do, I sing a little bit of Kenny Rogers for my outro music. I haven't shared the story for a while. I usually say I skip the story, but the very first episode I ever did with my mate who works at Pro Circuit, and I set it up so I was all comfortable. I was doing it with a good friend, and I went to a lot of trouble what I was going to say at the start, and I had an intro song which I don't always use now because of copyright, things and all that. But and I was so prepared for the first show, and then I'm just about to get set up, and I realized I hadn't thought about any sort of outro music, how to close the show. Most shows they have a bit of a thing at the end, and I just thought, well, I'll just sing a song that I know the words to. So I did that, and it just stuck and become a bit of a fun thing. And I might change the song one day, but it's just a little bit of Kenny Rogers for the outro music. And I always say, if you know the words to Kenny Rogers the Gambler, you're more than welcome to join in. So I'll just ease into a bit of that. So I handed him my bottle, and he drank down my last swallow. Then he bummed a cigarette and asked me for a light, and the night got deathly quiet, and his face lost all expression. Said, if you're going to play the game, boy, you got to learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting.
When the dealing's done.
Nice. I love it. I
Actually,
love
Steve, I was trying to be quiet, but
it.
Good job. Yay,
No
Steve. That's
worries. Thanks for that. I love it. I love it when people join in. A lot of people join in just at the end there because everyone knows that last little bit. Yeah,
that's the only line I knew.
yeah, yeah.
I
Fantastic.
didn't I didn't forewarn her or tell her anything about the accent or the song, so let
Yeah,
her
yeah,
be a
Practice.
I know, she would have been practicing all day like us guys,
yeah.
competitive.
That's it. Yeah, I never forewarn anyone about the song. That's always a bit of fun. I know it's scarce. So it's funny. Like it's the old thing of singing in public and that sort of thing is like a huge fear for a lot of people. It's a funny thing. It's something that it's funny. There's a lot of things from me as a child to me as an adult that are like almost the opposite. It's like and one of the things, like if I had to do an oral presentation at school, I would be terrified for until it was over. Like I would be terrified. I would be unbelievably anxious. I'd be trying to figure out a way to be sick and not have to go to school. It was just like the worst possible thing I could ever imagine. Now I host a podcast. I love singing karaoke. And like that sort of stuff is like, yeah, it's there's a few things about me, like, where I was some of my biggest fears and weaknesses as a kid are like strengths now, so
Isn't that
it's funny. It
fantastic?
ties in a little bit to what we've been talking about too, I guess. Yeah, just on
Oh,
that.
my.
Yeah, you're a real inspiration. And by the way, we love having people like you at our camps because you can really turn around and teach those young people, what you've been through.
Yeah, cool. I'm always open to, and like I've said on shows before, I'm unbelievably open about my past, and I love nothing more than helping people. So if anyone listens to this and they even want to have a question for me about any of that sort of stuff, I'm a totally open book, and you can all easily DM me and we can talk. Thank you very much for your time today, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Real pleasure, Steve.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Steve.
No
Appreciate
worries.
it.
All right. We'll see you later. No
Cheers.
worries.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.